Hi everybody, and welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast, and still the world's only dedicated OKR podcast. I hope you're all really well. This week I am delighted to welcome back Roger, the Derby Giant founder.
Hey there.
It's a little while since we had you on one actually, Roger.
Yeah.
You've been on holiday?
I wish. I've certainly been tuning in on a regular basis and keeping an ear to what's been going on.
Fantastic.
Some really good stuff I've been listening to, which is fantastic.
Yeah, we've had some great guests on recently.
Yeah, you definitely have.
So this is actually the first of a mini series of podcasts you and I are going to record, isn't it?
Yeah.
All about the recent white paper report you've just written.
That's correct, yeah.
So why don't you first just tell everyone a little bit then about, well, who we are as a bit of a summary in case people are just starting to tune in again and might not know. And why you've taken the time to write this report.
Okay, so for those of you that are new to the podcast, then we are, Derby Giants is the UK's leading OKR consultancy. We work internationally with clients all around the world who are trying to get to grips with OKRs to help them manage and drive their growth, their change and their innovation. Now, it may sound like, or you may be wondering why someone might need help with that. Well, you see, the thing is with OKRs, there are multiple ways of interpreting and multiple ways of applying them. And what we often find is that when businesses try to do this for themselves, they can get themselves in a bit of a pickle sometimes. They can get themselves into a state of confusion around how to do it, or a state of perpetual debate on how to do it. And nothing really changes or nothing really happens. So we help to cut through that with a very clear methodology which doesn't come in and dictate how they must do it, but it helps them design how to do it. And we kind of cut through all the noise, help them develop an OKR system and structure which is right for them, and then hopefully leave them with the skills and the practice and the habits so that they can sustain it and indeed actually evolve it once we've long left sight, so to speak.
Fantastic. And like you said, we work all over the world doing that at the moment, don't we?
We do indeed, yeah. Our next trip, besides speaking in Amsterdam later this week, our next trip is actually off to the Caribbean, which I never thought I'd hear myself say as a business trip, legitimate business trip.
In just a couple of weeks' time, that one, isn't it?
Just a couple of weeks, indeed. So we have definitely spread our wings and far and wide, actually.
That's awesome. So this white paper then, what's it all about?
I'm a very naturally curious person, although curiosity to one person might be nosy to another, I don't know. But I'm a big believer in doing research, because research is what helps us to understand how things are used, test out hypothesis, see if the hunch that we have might be right or wrong. And I did my first research paper about 4 or 5 years ago, which was just on the general theme of performance management, and it was just asking the question, what are the modern practices that we're starting to see emerge in that field? And indeed, that's what led me to OKRs at the time. And I wrote about OKRs as being one of a number of options which could be used to re-engineer performance management. And as we've obviously over the years become far more specialised in OKRs, I was wondering, right, what is it that why is it that people have chosen them? I mean, obviously we have these conversations on an anecdotal basis when we work with clients, but let's actually cast the net further than just our clients and go out to hopefully as many people as we can find who are using OKRs and ask these questions. And the whole point of this paper is to find out, it's basically to answer 3 or 4 questions. First of all, why have you chosen to use them? Secondly, how did you go about using them? Thirdly, what did you find when you did use them? I.e., did they help you achieve what it was that you set out to achieve? Did they do their job? And fourthly, if you were to do it all again, what would you do differently? A little bit of reflection based upon what you've learned? What would you do differently? And besides being a curious person, I have a belief that in terms of where OKRs are as a business concept in terms of their adoption or uptake is, if you think of the diffusion of innovation bell curve, we've got the innovators and the early adopters, and if you add all those together, that comes to about 17 to 18% market penetration. And then once you get past that 18% point, that's what they call the tipping point. You start to see rapid acceleration of a product into a marketplace or of an idea, as OKRs are. And in a sense, I kind of see this research paper as a way of trying to help tip that balance.
Right.
Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the learning from those innovators and early adopters and present it in a way so that those who perhaps have yet to act but are not quite ready, hopefully when they read this and they see how people have adopted it, what they got, how long it took for them to see the benefits, so on and so forth. Hopefully this can help to manage their expectations around what they should be looking for when they take OKRs on board.
Okay, so over this little series of podcasts then, what are the areas we're going to focus on? What were the headline findings from
Okay, so the headline findings. So there were 8 or 9 headline findings from the paper. First of all, it was found that OKRs are still most widely used in the technology sector, and that includes software as well. However, we are now starting to see an emergence of them being used in more traditional sectors like finance, professional services, and also manufacturing. I found manufacturing quite interesting, and when you think about it, manufacturing has gone through a number of revolutions in how it worked over the years, particularly with concepts like lean from Toyota and such like, and if anything, similar to, I suppose, the tech sector, I think manufacturing is probably a fairly open-minded sector in terms of always looking for improvements in efficiencies, always looking for improvements in performance, and therefore open to new techniques. So am I surprised to see them there? No. We haven't worked with any manufacturing clients yet. I dare say there may well be at some point in the future, but really encouraged to see that they're showing up there now. The next one is around we've seen a wider adoption of OKRs in smaller businesses, and by smaller businesses we mean businesses of less than 100 people. However, we did find evidence of them being used in organisations of up to and over 2,000 people, but what we found was that they were used more so for key projects, the management of key projects,
right,
or particular divisions within those organisations, rather than being completely widespread across the business. When asking what the priorities were for adopting OKRs, what it was, the reasons for adopting OKRs, without a doubt, actually 85% of respondents came back and said alignment with vision and strategy. This concept of alignment seems to be really, really important for organisations at the moment, and we could probably in fact we will, won't we, take a whole podcast to reflect on that and discuss it. But I've certainly got my thoughts on why that might be. OKRs are also being widely used to promote cross-functional working, which is something that I'm really pleased to hear. I know that's something that we focus on a lot in our work. Having worked in large organisations where silo working and silo thinking has been really prevalent and almost baked into the organisation, it was always very frustrating and hugely inefficient, and rather combative, really, in terms of the conflict that it used to inadvertently encourage. And I'm really pleased to see that we're seeing a much greater use of OKRs for cross-functional working. Unsurprisingly, we found that the data supports the assumption, as has been the case for a while, that the greater the number of OKRs you have in an organisation, the longer it takes the business to align when it comes to switching from one quarter to another. And I think, whilst that may sound like a pretty obvious statement to make, I think the key thing there is businesses often look to OKRs as a way to achieve agility in the business.
Right.
And you've got to be careful. You've got to kind of keep yourself in check that you don't use too many OKRs. Otherwise, you will start to really restrict that agility that you're seeking. So that was an interesting one. Those that decided to seek external support when setting OKRs up did see a faster uptake of OKR practice. Now, this is not to say that...
It's good for us.
Well, of course. But this is not to say that those that didn't eventually see benefits, but they were typically about 3 to 6 months later in seeing those benefits than those that did help. What was interesting was that those that didn't take any external help when setting up, actually 30% of those people or those businesses that didn't, when it came to asking them what would you do differently next time, actually said they would seek external support.
Oh, that is interesting.
So, so we're looking, at about 50% there that have either sought it or next time round would actually seek it. Mm-hmm. Now, this next one was a really interesting awakening for me, just sort of thinking about the agility of smaller businesses versus larger organisations. And what I found from the data was that smaller businesses, again, of up to 100 people, tend to have a preference for doing a big bang rollout of OKRs rather than a phased approach, which tends to be the preference of larger organisations.
Now, I'll just quickly explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, Big Bang is saying, right, everybody that is going to use OKRs is going to have them right from the start, right from day one. Whereas phased is saying, right, we're going to start off with this part of the business, and then perhaps next quarter we'll move to this part of the business, and so on.
Right.
And if you're following change management principles, traditional change management principles, the latter, the phased approach, is probably the one that most people would recommend. However, looking at the data, it was quite clear that those that did the smaller businesses that did opt for the Big Bang approach didn't seem to struggle too much with it, and I wondered why that might be. And my conclusion, and this is perhaps a whole new piece of research that might be worth testing the hypothesis on, is that smaller businesses, by virtue of the fact that they are smaller, less complicated, fewer people, that it is easier for them to change and to take on board a large change like OKRs in one go. So that is an interesting one, which like I said, is probably worthy.
Is that because it was being led by Is it because it was being led by the owners and the founders right from the beginning? Quite possibly.
There's also the argument that founders aren't always the best people to deliver projects like this because they set up the business and they might be thinking, in the mindset of an entrepreneur who loves the variety and isn't great at finishing things but great at starting things and so on and so forth. And And that type of person, I would say, is probably not the best type of character to be leading an initiative like OKRs. But who's to say that, by the time certainly they're getting to 100, they've probably got a chief operating officer who is more akin to, focusing on delivering a change until it's actually complete.
Sure.
So and delivering benefits. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. But I thought there was a very clear distinction between the rollout preference for both large and small businesses. The last few to go through now. We found when asking how long did it take for the organisation as a whole to master particular skills in relation to OKRs, we found that really it takes up to at least 9 months on average for people to master the skill of creating measurable, outcome-focused key results. And how much do we have to focus on that when we work on OKR implementations?
Always a big problem, isn't it?
It's the biggest mindset shift, isn't it? In the first in those first few workshops, and continues to be. So, I think this is a really important point for anybody that is thinking about using them. You can't expect within 3 months for people to necessarily automatically get it.
Yeah.
You've got to give them the time to practice this and to learn from getting it wrong. Allow them maybe to set a key result which isn't a particularly clear one, and if they work with that for a quarter, they will then find they will come to their own conclusion that it wasn't a good one, and that it's worth definitely putting the effort in to make it more measurable next time round. There was some anecdotal. This wasn't perhaps really captured in the data, but there was certainly some anecdotal comments in the responses that where they found that OKRs had struggled, mainly that was down to the lack of sponsorship from the C-suite.
Right.
Okay, and that the lack of role modelling, which unsurprisingly is a huge part of change management. And OKRs are not like any change initiative. You need that in place.
Somebody loves you.
Yes, indeed. It's our marketing team by the looks of it. Last couple of points. One of the major learning points is to focus more on managing the change that OKRs represent in order to gain buy-in from all those involved. I know I sound like a broken record going on about change management, but it really is it's a discipline in itself. But it is so important when you're putting in place a change like OKRs, because you are asking people to work differently. You're not necessarily asking them to do more, but you're asking them to do what they do differently. And you've got to give them a compelling reason for that.
100%.
Yeah. And finally, and this is perhaps the area of greatest debate and contention, the majority of those using OKRs, in fact it was 95% of our respondents, were choosing not to link, nor do they actually have plans to link them to performance management and reward. Now that is really interesting, because certainly if you read the books, a lot of these Silicon Valley prophets claim that OKRs don't work if you do that. And it seems like the majority of people out there that are choosing to use OKRs tend to agree with them. Yeah. But the great thing is that we are going to, this is a living, breathing piece of research. Just because we've got this year's report doesn't mean that we are going to just leave it there. Curiosity doesn't just stop overnight. I'll want to see whether things have changed next year, and so we're actually going to be collecting data on this throughout the course of the next 12 months, and around this time next year we'll look to release our annual report for next year, which will give us the chance to compare and contrast. And I wonder whether because we're still at, we've got a lot of our respondents were only sort of 12 to 18 months, some even just 2 years into using OKRs. I wonder whether they're taking kind of like the purists' view. No, we won't connect them to performance management, but I think when we go back in 12 to 18 months time, I wonder whether they might have shifted on that.
Yeah, be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so there might be people listening then that are using OKRs and think they'd love to get involved, help you out with some data. How can they fill in the survey?
You only have to go to okrsurvey.com.
Oh, what a URL that is.
There you go.
okrsurvey.com.
Yep.
And I'll include that in the notes on the podcast so people can find it.
Yeah.
And like we said at the beginning, we're going to be doing a more in-depth podcast on each of the headline findings. Yeah. But if people do want to download and read the report in full, where can they find that?
They can find that through therebegiants.com.
Okay, and I'll put a link to that in the report as well. So there you have it, guys. The actual paper is available for download now, and as usual, every Monday at midday UK time, that is, we will be launching a new episode of the podcast, and over the next few weeks they are going to focus on just this, on the report and the research and everything we found from it. So make sure you subscribe on whatever forum it is that you subscribe on, Spotify, iTunes, whatever it is these days, and keep up to date. And if you have any specific questions that we don't answer from the research, please just drop us a tweet or a message on LinkedIn, and we can always include an answer to that in the next podcast. So thanks for listening, and chat soon. Bye.
Thanks.